Welcome back, class 10. Continuing with your physical education class, we were studying principles of sports training. We have studied principles of sports training under the heading individuality, specificity, progression. Today, we are going to study about overload. To increase strength and endurance, one needs to add resistance, time or intensity to one's effort. So what does it mean? It means in order to increase strength and endurance in an athlete, the athlete needs to add new resistance, time or intensity in the exercise program. Okay, to run a 10-kilometer race, athletes need to build up distance over repeated session in a reasonable manner in order to improve muscle adaptation as well as improve soft tissue strength or resiliency. That means if one athlete or if any person wants to run 10 miles or 10 kilometers race, today I made up my mind to run 10 kilometers race and tomorrow I start running, it's not possible. Gradually, slowly, in a reasonable manner, you have to increase the load. You have to increase the training so that your muscle adaptation improves, your soft tissue resiliency. Your soft tissue should be resilient. It should be able to take that load. How it is possible? Just if I take the example that every day if you study 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, the pressure before the examination will decrease. But most of you, what do? That 2 or 3 nights before the exams you start studying. So everything is new. The pressure is new. The whole thing is new. So your brain is also a muscle, remember. Your brain is also a muscle. So the brain should also get adapted. It should have some previous training to memorize and understand things, just as the muscles of the body. If gradually the load is given, the muscle will be able to adapt it. And the same way, if gradually you study every day before the exam or before the night before the exam, your pressure will be much less. Any demanding exercise attempted too soon risks injury. Obviously, the same principle holds true for strength and power exercises. An athlete have to be exposed to an overload stimulus at regular intervals for the induction of training adaptations. An overload stimulus can be manipulated by changing the mode of exercise, duration, frequency, intensity, and recovery period between training sessions. An overload training stimulus can also be imposed by altering nutrition. If you alter the nutrition, a lot of change can be seen in a performance in an athlete. The basis of overload principle is the idea that for training adaptations to occur, the muscles or physiological components being trained must be exercised at a level that is not normally accustomed to. What does it mean? That your muscle or physiological components is accustomed to a certain level of exercise. If you don't increase the load, if you don't increase the pressure, if you don't increase the training program, intensity, your muscles will not get adapted or accustomed. For instance, to maximize muscular strength gains, the muscle needs to be stimulated with a resistance of relatively high intensity. So what does it mean? To maximize muscle gain, muscles need to be stimulated, activated. How? With a relatively high intensity resistance. Your resistance should go up each and every day to stimulate muscles gain. Now comes adaptation. Over time, the body becomes accustomed to exercising at a gain level. We say the body has reached a plateau. Plateau means there is no gains. You are doing the workout, you are doing training every day in the same intensity, still there is no gain. This adaptation results in improved efficiency, less effort, and less muscle breakdown at the level. This is why for the first time one runs 2 kilometers, muscle gets sore, but after some days continuing to run 2 kilometers becomes easy, and one may use it as warm up for main workout. So when you start running, for example, for 2 kilometers, initially you will get you will pant, you will have loss of breath, your muscles will become sore. But if you run every day, it will become very easy. And running 2 kilometers will just like be your warm up exercise. One needs to change the stimulus via higher intensity or longer duration in order to continue improvements. Adaptations to the demands of training occur gradually over long periods of time. Efforts to accelerate the process may lead to injury, illness, or overtraining. So, you should not accelerate, you should not forcefully increase the process, it should be gradual. If you forcefully increase the process of high intensity or overload or progression, your body needs time to get adapted. Adapted means to get accustomed. So, this is a very precise thing, precise science. Your body needs to be gradually adapted. Many adaptive changes reverse with training ceases. An inadequate training load will not provide an adequate stimulus, and a compensatory response will not occur. So the main issue of adaptation means, the main principle of adaptation means that your body needs to be adapted gradually through the process of progression and overload, so that the body or the muscles or your physiology does not attain a plateau. Plateau means there is no progression. So if you run 2 kilometers every day, after a week or so, running 2 kilometers will give you nothing. You will not feel anything. So you have to increase the kilometer. That is gradually your muscles will get adapted. That is gradual. Okay, if you want to run 10 kilometers, you start from 1 kilometer, then gradually 2 kilometers, then 3 kilometers, then it gradually goes up. Why? Because your body is getting adapted to the previous training methods. So your body needs to be challenged. Now, recovery. Recovery means repairing. After any sports training or any sort of training, body cannot repair itself without time, rest, and time to recover. Both short periods like hours between multiple sessions in a day or longer periods like days or weeks to recover from long sessions are necessary to ensure that the body does not suffer from exhaustion or overuse injury. If your body gets overused, injury can be there. So body needs rest, recuperation, rejuvenation, so that it will be fit, totally rejuvenated for the next training session. Motivated athletes often neglect this. If you are very motivated, if an athlete is overly motivated, he will exercise, go on, creating trouble for the body. At the basic level, the more one trains, the more sleep one's body needs. Despite the adaptation made in training, training and competing in the heat imposes more physiologic stress on athletes and requires a longer period of recovery. So if you're training in heat, you need a longer, because your body gets exhausted, dehydrated. Training and competition that induces muscle damages requires longer recovery periods than activities that cause fatigue but no muscle damage or soreness. So training and competition that requires muscle damage, that means bodybuilding, boxing, then all sorts of contact sports like wrestling, muscle damage is there. Why muscle damage is there? If your muscle is not damaged, new tissues will not grow. So in order to make the muscle fuller, or in order to enhance the growth of the muscles, tissue damage is necessary. And how the tissue will be repaired? Through food, nutrition, and proper recovery time. Even within a specific sport, the demand on players varies depending on the playing position. Ideally, the recovery of each player should be customized. Each player should have a customized recovery time. period of recovery is needed to continue progressive loading without the risk of injury or overtraining. Training sessions should alternate between heavy, light, and moderate in order to permit recovery. So one day you train heavy, so your body needs recovery time. So next day or the next session you train light. Next session you then go back to moderate and then go back to heavy. It's not that continuously you are doing heavy, because if you are an elite athlete, it's a different issue. Training differs from person to person. If XYZ plan goes for athlete A, ABC will go for athlete B, PQR will go for athlete C. So it differs. And the person who can make that difference and understand what training program is needed for what particular athlete is the best coach, best trainer. You should have that method. You should know that method. You should be educated enough to understand and prescribe such methods which is needed for different athletes. Reversibility. Reversibility. Performance and physical adaptations can deteriorate if training stops. Obviously, this is known as the principle of reversibility. You will go back to square one. A regular training stimulus is required in order for adaptation to occur and to be maintained. When the training stimulus is removed or reduced, the ability of athlete to maintain performance at a particular level is also reduced, and eventually the gains that were made while training program will regress back. The moment a trainer, an athlete or a person or a sports person stops training, reverse gear will start. It will go back. Reverse means going back. This is the basis of reversibility principle. When an individual removes the cast which was used to immobilize an injured body of a period of 21 days, the muscles of the injured limb have undergone a significant reduction of size, referred to as atrophy or strength. An example is given. Suppose someone's hand breaks a bone in the hand or a leg, and there is a cast or a plaster for 21 days. So after the bone heals up, when the plaster is removed, you will find that the arm or the leg, the muscles is reduced. It is known as muscle atrophy or muscles waste. Why? Because there is no movement in that place. So if there is no movement, there is no exercise. So when there is no exercise, the muscle size will reduce. This drastic reduction in size and strength of muscles occurs because of lack of activity while the limb was in the cast or plaster. When the limb was in the plaster, you were not able to move it. So for 21 days, there is no movement, no exercise, nothing. So there is a reduction of size, reduction in strength and size of muscles, as well as other performance measures can be seen if the training stimulus to produce gains are removed or even just reduced. If the training is removed or just reduced, the performance level will go down. The extent of performance decrement relates to the length of the detraining or reduced training for the period of time of activity. The more you detrain, the more you are out of the training, your performance will go down. Directly proportionate. The pattern or timeline of performance decrement differs from endurance and strength power activities. So it differs from athletes. An athlete who is doing endurance training, his performance rate, and a person or an athlete who is doing strength power activities, his reversibility rate will differ. If both stops training for a month, the reversibility percentage will differ from an athlete who is doing endurance practice and a person or an athlete who is doing strength power. I hope you have understood. It is a little critical. After going through my class, you should study the book. You will understand it. So in the next class, we'll start off with variance, then we'll continue with frequency, continuity, active participations, and principles like periodization. Okay. And intensity. It's a big but a very, very interesting chapter. I hope you are understanding, because it's a very important chapter, principles of sports training. So in the next class, we'll continue with this chapter. Thank you very much for today.